with the new government you see at the center in India, and with this, with this slogan, "Make in India," has captured the imagination, and we wanted to take advantage of the presence of a significant number of state delegations here. So let me introduce the panel, and we get started. The moderator of the panel is Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan. He is the founder and vice chairman of Cognizant, based in Chennai. So he has a pretty good feel for not just at the policy level what things are happening, but what's happening is at the ground level. We also have a former cabinet minister in the UPA government, Mr. Pallam Raju, and he'll provide us his perspective and perhaps opposition perspective on Make in India. We also have Mr. Madhukar Jaitley. He is the Minister for NRI Affairs in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Honorable Consul General Ashok Venkateshan. He will provide what he thinks is the policies of the government and see what they mean and how entrepreneurs can take advantage of that here. And finally, we have a representative from state of Telangana, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. He is a Commissioner for Industries. Did I get that right? Commissioner for Industries. Okay. May I request Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan to start the proceedings? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Venkat. And let me add my welcome to all of you to this interesting panel. I think the members, I'll introduce them one by one. As a preparation for this, we were standing outside and talking for about 5 to 10 minutes. Each of the members who are here have a certain specific interest. They said, it's not just Make in India, it is Make in my state. So we said, oh, that's going to be a little difficult. The culmination of all of that hopefully will be Make in India. But we are going to have an interesting discussion about the perspectives of different areas in the country. To begin with, we want the Consul General, Mr. Ashok Venkateshan, to set the stage. The reason why it is important for him to set the stage is, in the last 1 year, one of the key changes that have happened, driven by the new government, is to focus the consular offices on trade development between countries, between India and the country that they represent. Trade, investment, job creation, growth has been added. It is always in the mandate, but specific focus to be given by the consular officers there. So Ashok will talk about that. In addition, he has certain specific responsibility towards collaboration between India and the US in the areas of education and research. I hope we'll get a time to talk about that as well. And the way we'll run it is each of the speakers will get about 5 to 7 minutes to talk about what's on their mind, which is relevant to the topic. And after that, we'll open it up for question and answers. Thank you. May I now invite Ashok?
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. In the last 5.5 months that I've been here, the focus that I have sought to zoom in on has been Make in India. Now, we look at it as 3 parts. There's Make in India, there's Swachh Bharat, and there is Digital India. In a sense, all 3 factor into Make in India, because even when you talk in terms of sanitation and Digital India, you essentially are trying to see how to increase capacities, whether it is in cleaning up the country, providing better water supply, and through that, other things will improve, like health and so on, and thereby the standard of living will also change. So the consulate has focused on a series of Make in India seminars, most recently on May 11th, along with TIE and the US-India Business Council. We organized a seminar in the Bay Area where over 100 companies participated. We will be doing this on a regular basis in the 12 states which are in my jurisdiction. And as I see it, this is a tremendous opportunity and a time for Indian and US businesses to get together in this grand project. Why? Because, firstly, our relationship has never been as excellent with the bilateral relationship has never been at the level it has been as it is today since our independence. That is a very good harbinger of possibilities. The second reason is that the Indian economy is looking up, and there is great promise in terms of Indian businesses looking outward. The third reason is that Indian businesses are not only seeking investment from American firms, Indian businesses are also coming into America. And we have many companies like the Tatas and Mahindras and Reliance and others who are involved in setting up or involved in even manufacturing in the United States. And in fact, growth in Indian investment in the last 10 years has been almost an annual 75%, which is amazing. So we see that it is a two-way process of cross-fertilization. And whether we talk in terms of increasing manufacturing, as you know, the target is to take it from 15% of GDP to 25% of GDP, and we must remember that China is at 45% of GDP. Or we are talking and then if you need to achieve this kind of manufacturing in order to employ these 12 million people who enter the job market, we need energy. Again, we are talking in terms of the possibilities for US firms to participate. The Prime Minister has upped the ante for renewable energy from 20,000 megawatts to 100,000 megawatts by 2022. The nuclear deal and the administrative arrangements will hopefully pave the way for achieving a much better mix in terms of nuclear. But please remember that at the end of the day, nuclear will probably be 10 to 15% of the total energy mix, not higher. And so we are talking of a whole lot of other host of other energies. And then we are talking of energy efficiency. If you can improve your energy efficiency and get 30% better output, you are talking in terms of 80,000 megawatts of power generation in respect of today's 240,000 megawatts of installed capacity. So it's a huge jump you could do just by energy efficiency, not by adding any further capacity. And then lastly, also in energy, in terms of second-generation biofuels, both lignoscellulosic, moving on to algae in the long range. Now, when we talk of this span, and then after when you provide this energy and you do the manufacturing, then you get these people. Are you going to make them live in Dharavi and other similar shanty towns? No. We are going to give good towns. So that's a smart city initiative where you provide public transport, affordable housing, and so on. So it's a package deal. And when you do this, you will have to provide water supply, sewage treatment. And for all these things, again, you have technologies available in this part of the world. The fact is that you are in the most fertile location in terms of innovation, entrepreneurship, venture capitalism, angel financing, hand-holding, incubation, the works. You cannot get a better place than California and this part of the world for doing that, getting the technologies across to India, adapting it to our system, and managing to see that 700,000 villages do get the benefit of our water supply, of energy, and communication connectivity. So I think in this term, we are very hopeful that we can push this Make in India system, encourage companies to go across, and we are also in close touch with the government of India and with state departments, state governments, in order to, we are facilitating individual state governments also when they request us to come and exhibit their people and their firms and to try to achieve link-ups. So that, as you remember that when you're talking India, you're talking of the federal government, central government, but you're also talking in terms of 29 states which are competing with each other. You have a tremendous opportunity. Before I end, I just wanted to make out that the other critical area we are focusing on is education, science, research, technology. Because when I spoke of taking innovation from here to India and bringing innovation from India here and doing a matchmaking, we need to make sure that the educational institutions, the research institutions, the best minds are able to link up. And so we have already started this dialogue with the universities of California, and we are also engaging universities like Stanford and others in order to see how best we can cross-fertilize this process. Berkeley is already doing smart city initiatives in our country with their students, and so I see great possibilities in terms of students exchange and being able to bring people across. And lastly, the university system here is the universities of California, the California State Universities, and the community colleges. This year, when President Obama visited, one of the things mentioned was that we want to learn from the community college system and incorporate that in India. So again, for skills development, nothing could be better than the community college system in order to bring people into the educational field. And then if they wish to break off after the 2 years of community college and move into industry, that's one option. If they wish to go further and do higher education in tertiary universities, that is also an option. So this is basically what we are trying to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashok. And for the benefit of the audience, Mr. Ashok Venkatesan is from IIT Delhi, very passionate about education and research and also about renewable energy, water and desalination. And I do want to add one comment. There is one representative here, Mr. Srikanth Rajan, who is trying to connect IIT Madras with the universities here. And there is a director of IIT and some of the other leading people who are going to be visiting here. It may be interesting for you both to connect after the session is done. Let me invite the next speaker, Mr. Pallam Raju, an illustrious person from the state of Andhra Pradesh, youngest member of parliament several years ago, I must say.
Decades ago.
Used to be a minister in the central government, Minister of State for Defense, Minister of Human Resource Development. Again, a person who's been very actively involved in the areas of skill development in the country, was part of setting up the National Skills Development Corporation, and is also very passionate about bringing defense manufacturing and development into India.
Good morning, and Lakshmi, thank you for that generous introduction. And I want to, at the outset, dispel the notion this is going to be an opposition point of view, and much to the disappointment of the audience. But what I would like to say is it's a continuum, whether we are in government or whether in opposition. I think, promoting India, creating opportunity for India is an ongoing effort, whether we are in power or we are not in power. And I will choose to highlight, the opportunities and definitely, what needs to be, how the bottlenecks need to be addressed also. And I can see by the presence of the audience that it's a rather thin audience. So the skepticism about manufacturing in India still persists. But that is the reason that there's a special panel discussion today on Make in India. Definitely we are hoping as a nation to reverse the contribution of manufacturing as a percentage of the GDP. Like the Consul General has mentioned, I think it's around 15%, which we hope to take up to 25% at least in the coming years. And definitely work has to be done on a lot of fronts in creating the environment, in creating the ecosystem, in creating the skills base in order to create the manufacturing competencies. It's not that we've never had a manufacturing base. India had, across the years, invested consistently in the public sector undertakings. And I think the private sector has done rather well. And depending on who's been the promoter and how sustained their efforts were, they've taken these companies to global standards. And as far as the public sector undertakings are concerned, I think they've grown. They've gained their prominence by virtue of their size rather than their competency. But nevertheless, we have a sizable public sector undertaking and a very vibrant private sector, and a very vibrant small and medium enterprise sector also, which contributes in a number of ways. But now the real challenge before us is in taking it to the next level. And the two opportunities that I wanted to talk about is, one is in the area of defense. And in the previous government in 2005, when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee was the defense minister, we had formulated the offsets policy, which is a part of the defense procurement procedure, whereby if there is any purchase that the Ministry of Defense is doing, which is over 300 crores, 30% of that has to be sourced out of India. So the whole idea was to enhance and widen the defense manufacturing base. And I think it has been yielding a lot of dividends. A lot of countries, including the United States, have come and done a very thorough due diligence about the capabilities and the capacities that exist in India. And things are happening. I think that's definitely an opportunity area. And the current government and the current Prime Minister have re-emphasized that we need to strengthen the defense manufacturing base. And because if you look at the CIPRI report, over the last 10 years, India has been a big importer of defense equipment, and to the extent of an increase of 140% on an annual basis. So that's a substantial increase. So instead of importing it all, we hope to manufacture most of it out of India. So there are several fronts on which we are working, and I think value addition on the technology front can definitely be brought in by United States-based companies. The other opportunity is, I think, in the area of skilling, because that's one of the factors that is inhibiting the expansion of the manufacturing base. And there's a lot of premium attached to education rather than skilling in India, as we all know. And I think we are hoping that the skilling base can be widened. And the previous government took the initiative of forming the National Skill Development Mission. And as we speak, there are 31 sectors that they have identified where industry will set the standards of competency of level 1 to 10. And the standards that will be determined will be of a global standard. So these are the sectors where industry calls the shots, it sets the standards, and this is where skilling needs to happen. The National Skill Development Corporation, which is the arm that funds the expansion of capacities in skilling, is playing a very vibrant role. And I would definitely like to laud the current government that they formed a separate ministry for as far as the national skill development is concerned, and giving it a particular focus. And I think that is another opportunity area where firms and companies from the United States can go and create capacities for skilling, for skilling people on a global standards. Of course, I mean, whatever may be the intention of the government at the center, eventually implementation challenges remain in the states. And we have two very important states represented here, the state of Telangana and the state of Uttar Pradesh. And I'm certain that in the coming years, the states will play their part in enhancing the manufacturing base and the skilling base and create the environment for growth and opportunity in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raju. And Mr. Raju is quite familiar with this country, the practices that are followed here. In addition to studying engineering in India, he went to business school here in the US, spent quite a few years working for companies here in the US before returning to India, and took up the family business of politics. Thank you.
Correction, no, it's not a business, it's a commitment.
And one trivia here, I was reading that India is the largest importer of unmanned aerial vehicles and drones anywhere in the world. 22.5% of all these UAVs that are exported out of Israel, US, and the manufacturing countries end up in India in various missions. Now, that brings us to Mr. Madhukar Jaitley. He's the advisor to the government of Uttar Pradesh. He has several large tasks, including bringing up the Lucknow Metro. What he's responsible for is all the projects that are funded by NRIs and overseas financing bodies, including World Bank, IMF, etc. Mr. Madhukar.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. As the Council General has very rightly just now said, the initiatives of the central government, and Mr. Pallam Raju also mentioned about the Government of India's previous government's initiatives that are being taken forward by the present government. Our state government, since it came to power in 2012, has actually come forward with a lot of new ideas that are taking place in Uttar Pradesh. And why we have actually participated from UP for the first time in this conference is that the perception of the state, which is actually changing on the ground, has to be brought to the notice of all of you across the globe. Now, with regard to few initiatives that the state government has taken on the policy level, that the new policies that are coming up with regard to the manufacturing sector, the other policies with regard to different other sectors, from solar policy to the IT policy to the healthcare systems and to the manufacturing. So these initiatives are some initiatives of the state government that are actually, which we are going to highlight tomorrow as well, in the separate state session of Uttar Pradesh. But besides that, the most important few logistic issues are that the state government of Uttar Pradesh is one state which has the 55% of the eastern dedicated freight corridor, which comes from one end of the country to the other end of the country, and it passes 55% from the state of UP. Both the states, the western corridor and the eastern corridor, both pass through the state of UP, and the junction point is in Dadri. So with regard to all those people who are considering Uttar Pradesh as a destination, we want to actually highlight these issues, that the state government has, UP is emerging now as a changing destination, and the UP state, which is one of the largest state in the country with regard to population, with regard to manpower, that we already have existing in the state of UP, it can be utilized towards the advantage of these companies and the new investors who want to come forward and see that UP is a destination which should be, the perception of Uttar Pradesh has to actually change. With regard to the power problem which we were facing from a very long time, the state is adding the capacity from the 10,000 megawatt of power that it had to few more thousand megawatt of power, and we are going to increase, and the state government is going to become self-sufficient with regard to those industries that require individual capacitated power plants. So we will actually be in a position to help the industry and the people living in this part of the world to look at and keep an idea about the state of UP, what UP is all going to change about in the last 3-4 years, in the coming years also. The state government's policies are very proactive, very user-friendly. The government of India has already announced certain initiatives in different areas, but the state government actually has come forward with regard to the mega projects also, which the government of UP is going to pass out in the coming cabinet meeting, and the individual investors from a certain level of say 200 crores to above are going to be treated on a case-to-case basis in UP. So advantages to the people who want to set up industries, set up their opportunities in UP are very wide and very large. And we are going to answer all the questions for those people who are interested in looking at UP as a destination for emerging in future. The opportunities of UP are emerging. Logistically, we are the only state in the country which has got so much of population and so much of cities which have got large population. Like in 5 major cities, we are coming up with the metro projects, which is not happening in any part of the country. So these initiatives, economic activities are happening. We want you to include UP as a part of your strategy for future, and consider the state of UP as an emerging state, and please change the perception of the state of UP. We will be available tomorrow as well, and if anybody has any questions to ask us, we will be more than happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jaitley, would you also like to touch upon the metro project, use of technology, unified ticketing, or would you like to do that separately?
Those issues are going to be addressed in due course of time. The technology we would like to employ in those areas are going to be the best in the world. So wherever there is a possibility of changing including new technologies, we will definitely consider that as an option.
And that brings us to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. He represents the state of Telangana. He's the Commissioner of Industries. He's had a fantastic academic career and a bureaucratic career. IIM Calcutta, public policy degree from Singapore, London School of Economics, Kennedy School, Harvard University, topper, IAS, a brilliant person. So we're all waiting to hear from.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all begin by sharing with those who don't know what Telangana is. Telangana is the new kid on the block. This is the latest state in India. Unlike in the US, where there is a freeze in creating new states, there is no such thing in India. And Telangana is now the 29th state of the country, with its capital in Hyderabad. And despite being a new state, and obviously it has been bifurcated from the larger state of Andhra Pradesh, it still remains the 12th largest state in the country. It has a population which is more than that of Canada. So by no means it is an insignificant or a small state. Now, the state is not even 1 year old. We have come into existence from 2nd June last year. But certain very path-breaking things have happened in the last 11 months. In fact, the very first policy which the state government has brought out, the new government has brought out, is the industrial policy, and it has some very, very unique and innovative features. So if you look at industrialization in India from an investor's point of view, there are a few things which the investor definitely looks forward, whether it is an international investor or a domestic investor. And one of the most important factors is how easy it is to do business in that state. As we know, India enjoys a rather poor reputation as a country. And World Bank, when it ranks different countries on the ease of doing business, India currently is at 134th. But again, there are lots of variations among the states. And as other speakers have pointed out, the real action is right now happening in the states of India. And as I said, when the first policy was introduced in the state of Telangana, we also decided to improve the macro factors which contribute to or which promote to the ease of doing business. Now, in the new industrial policy, we have committed that every mega project in which there is an investment of above $30 million, or which creates an employment of more than 1,000 people, or which is of strategic importance to the state, we will give all permissions and clearances in 15 days. And this will be based on self-certification. If you are confident that you will comply with the laws of the land, you just give a self-certificate and you start your construction activities from the very next day. You don't require any permissions, any approvals, and all this can be done giving your self-certification letter, getting a single point of approval. All will happen within the 15 days. Now, you might have heard these kind of promises umpteen number of times. Every state government says that they are going to do this, they'll create an efficient single window, they'll monitor it effectively, they'll make it online. But there is something else we have done, which is again unparalleled in the history of our country, which is that we have legislated a right to the investor to get these clearances within 15 days, which means that if you don't get these approvals within 15 days, first of all, on the 16th day, it is deemed that you have got all the clearances. And second, you have a right to sue us. In fact, there is no other Indian government which says that you can hold me to our words. You can make us accountable. And let me give you some very dramatic examples. Amazon has decided to set up the largest warehouse of the country. They call it Fulfillment Center in Hyderabad. And they were given all clearances in 11 days. MRF, which is a giant tire manufacturing company in the south, they have decided to set up a manufacturing unit to manufacture aircraft tires in Hyderabad. They are investing about 1,000 crores. And their approvals have been given in 10 days. IKEA is opening the first store in the country in Hyderabad, and they have not applied formally, but we are ready to give it to approvals to them on the very next day. They apply today and get the approval tomorrow. So we are beating all kinds of records. So in terms of ease of doing business, creating a hassle-free environment, creating a graft-free environment, we have set the standards very, very high. In fact, the very first sentence of our industrial policy mentions that the state of Telangana ushers in a graft-free and a hassle-free industrial regime. And our chief minister meets large number of industrialists because Hyderabad still remains a very important magnet. And I have attended some of the meetings which he conducts with the business houses. And he tells upfront and on their face that now that you are doing business in Telangana, he uses a Hindi term. He tells them that there will be no lena dena hereafter. So no one will expect anything from you, and you are also not expected to give anything to anyone. So a very, very transparent, graft-free, hassle-free industrial regime. And we are seeing the results. In fact, we are in the US for the last 2 weeks. And I don't know whether you're following news or not. Google has announced the first campus outside USA in Hyderabad. And we met John Chambers of Cisco yesterday. We met people from Oracle and lots of other top companies. And everyone is keen to once again start doing business with Telangana. Because in the last 4 or 5 years, because of the statehood agitation, because of the disturbances, things had slowed down. But with this kind of a visionary policy, this kind of a path-breaking initiative, we are very much back in business. The other interesting features of our industrial policy is, as you know, business houses, industrialists, investors look for lands. And as some of you may be aware, land acquisition for industries is becoming more and more complicated. The act introduced by the previous government is now getting kind of reviewed, and still we don't have clarity. But nevertheless, whatever is the final outcome, at the national level, it will remain very difficult to acquire private lands for setting up of your units. In Telangana, again, our Chief Minister has taken a very, very bold decision. The decision that he has taken is all lands that are not fit for agriculture is straight away reserved for industries. So with this one bold decision, in one stroke, we now have an industrial land bank of 250,000 acres. In fact, this is unparalleled. The nearest land bank which any other state can boast of, I presume it is in Rajasthan, where they have about 70,000 acres. So 250,000 acres of clear lands, government land, clear title. And we have also decided that each of the industrial parks, just as China does, will have the full complement of infrastructure. So you will have assured water supply. In fact, 10% of all reservoirs of Telangana have been earmarked for industries. Then we are taking steps to become self-sufficient in terms of power generation. When the state got bifurcated, we suddenly became power deficit because most of the generation capacity remained in the residuary state of Andhra Pradesh. But we are having very clear short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans to augment our own generation. Until that happens, we are buying power every day. In fact, every day we buy almost 800 to 1,000 megawatts of power just to ensure that there is not even 1 hour of power cut for the industries. And this is a commitment that till we start producing our own power, we will buy for you and supply to you. So assured water, assured power, all infrastructure in place, single window system, automatic approvals, graft-free environment, 250,000 acres of land. And we have also developed a package of incentives. Of course, all Indian states provide incentives for investments. And in some states, something will be higher, something will be lower. But on the whole, in totality, the package that we have put together matches some of the best in India, and therefore it is considered to be a very attractive package. And for tailor-made industries, for important industries where the investments are higher, the value to the state is very large, we can tailor-make these incentives. So for example, when I said Google is setting up its campus in Hyderabad, the first outside America, we have given lands to Google at 1/3 the prices. So this is in the heart of the cyber space in Hyderabad, which is called Cyberabad. And we are giving 7 acres of prime land to Google at 1/3 of the prices, which is there in the market. So we can tailor-make incentives. We can tailor-make a package of benefits for you. So, and in the industrial policy, we have identified 14 priority sectors. These are the sectors where Telangana or Hyderabad either is already very strong or we see a tremendous potential, a tremendous sense of opportunity. So for example, as you know, Telangana or Hyderabad is very strong in IT, in software, etc. But we are not that strong in electronic manufacturing. So hardware is also, electronic manufacturing is also one of the priority areas. And we are chasing large number of Korean, Taiwanese, Chinese companies who are willing to look at India for shifting their manufacturing base. Life sciences is another of our priority areas. Many of you will be aware that lots of, Hyderabad is the hub of production of bulk drugs, formulations, but the gap areas, medical devices, for instance, we are not very strong in medical devices. So we are creating an exclusive industrial park for medical devices where additional benefits will be given. Vaccines, we are already strong. Many of you will not be aware. It will cause some surprise to you when I tell this to you, that 20% of the world's vaccines are made in Hyderabad. Not India's vaccines or Asia's vaccines. 20% of global vaccine manufacturing takes place in Hyderabad. As Pallam Raju sir mentioned, we are also looking at the opportunity in the defense and aerospace sector because, as many of you will be aware, the entire defense research establishment is in Hyderabad. And the ecosystem on defense research, defense production has become very strong these days. Many of you will again be taken by surprise to know that the helicopter which flies American President Obama, the cabin of it is manufactured in Hyderabad. So American President flies in a Hyderabad, which is made in India. It is made in Hyderabad, actually. And that is Sikorsky. Tata has a joint venture project with Sikorsky, and they manufacture it in Hyderabad. And the software which tracks the helicopter once it is in flight, that is also developed in Hyderabad. So, and this Mars orbiter, which recently went, Indian Space Establishment sent this satellite to Mars recently. It's called MOM, mission on Mars. So 30% of the components of that Mars orbiter were manufactured in Hyderabad, and mostly by small and medium enterprises. So there are more than 1,000 SMEs which are into defense. So we are focusing on defense and aerospace in a very, very big way. And there are so many other areas we have identified: textiles, food processing, chemicals, gems and jewelry. So there are 14 such sectors. So these being priority sectors, the incentives which we will give to any other industry will be much more if you are investing in one of these priority sectors. We also want to become a big player in startups and innovations. As you know, India, while it is a big pool of talent, unfortunately, we haven't seen any major product breakthrough coming from India. All the Facebooks and WhatsApp and all these other kind of Googles and everything else happens in America. And even small countries like Israel and Singapore do much more innovation and creative work than India. So we have decided to buck this trend, reverse this trend. We are now setting up the largest incubator space in India in Hyderabad, and it is going to be inaugurated on the 1st of June. This is called the T-Hub, or the Technology Hub. So we are bringing in all the knowledge-based institutions of Hyderabad. There are more than 50 premier knowledge-based institutions like ISB, IIT, IIIT, BITS, IICT, ICRISAT. So all kinds of knowledge-based institutions, they are there. We are bringing them on a common platform along with VCs, along with investors. The government will provide physical space and some seed capital. In the Bay Area also, we have received very, very positive response. And in fact, many of the Bay Area investors have suggested that they would run an incubator of T-Hub here in the Bay Area, so that any idea which has the promise of getting into the US ecosystem, they will provide a conduit to it. So a lot is happening in Telangana, a lot is happening in Hyderabad, and I'll be very happy to stay connected with you. All these details can be read on our website, which is www.industries.telangana.gov.in. I'll speak slowly and repeat it once again. www.industries.telangana.gov.in. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening.
That's probably the best pitch that we have heard all day. And, many of these things are true. I think one of the interesting things that at least I noticed is, instead of waiting for industries to apply for licenses and granting them within 15 days, this government is going out seeking specific companies to come and invest in that particular state, which is very, very encouraging. Thank you, Jayesh, for that. Okay. Now we go back to, I've got a few questions. Please keep these questions coming. The ones that I've got so far are not something that I would like to pick at this stage, because it will get into a debate format, which is not what we want to do here. So if there are other things that are relevant to whatever the comments the speakers made, please keep them coming. There's one question that I have for Mr. Ashok Venkateshan. He talked about collaborating or working closely with US-India Business Council. What is the mandate of US-India Business Council, and how does that translate into investments and facilitating the Make in India program?
The US-India Business Council traditionally, can you hear me? Is one of the facilitators. There are other organizations like the Bay Area Council in here, which is more local. But on the national level, federal level, it is the US-India Business Council. So what we do is that the Business Council joins hands with us, and we jointly identify entrepreneurs, interested industrialists, and others who would like to participate in these events. And that is why we join hands with TIE, so that we can have greater synergy and larger audience for this kind of purpose.
Yeah, please.
You see, for the first time in Uttar Pradesh in 2013, US-India Business Council played a very important role. It brought about 40 companies of different sectors to Uttar Pradesh, and the state government of Uttar Pradesh actually engaged with them, and they finally have resulted into something happening on the ground. Like few companies from solar power have actually started operating in UP, and they were actually facilitated by the US-India Business Council.
Related to defense, The question is, you mentioned that large companies are setting up, from US are setting up manufacturing facility in India. What about innovative startups? How are they encouraged? What kind of facilities can be offered for innovation in the defense area?
The primary organization that is involved with research and development is the Defense Research and Development Organization. And I think they are open to collaborating with companies which are coming in with innovative technologies or state-of-the-art technologies. And there is ample scope for working together along with DRDO and the defense public sector undertakings, depending on what technology and what area of defense manufacturing is involved. Apart from that, I think people are aware of the tremendous growth the IT industry has been experiencing in India. It stands at $146 billion today, the income that is the revenues that are being generated by the IT industry. And there is a lot of capital, VC capital, that is chasing startups in this space in India. So the funds are available, the environment is there, the talent is there, and it's a question of how you pitch your technology if it is targeted at defense to the Defense Research and Development Organization, which has to vet the technology and seek its relevance. And that is the way to go about it.
Just to add a small thing to what Minister Pallam Raju has said, in the case of startups and new technologies, especially those with heavy science and technology content, the India-US Science and Technology Forum is also a means for them to start getting some kind of seed money. They are looking for entrepreneurs, they are looking for people who are wanting technology. And if you have an entrepreneur with technology who's wanting to invest, it's possible for him to get seed money through the India-US Science and Technology Fund, and that can start him off. Then he can link into whichever area. I'm talking of even areas which are not totally into defense only. For example, there is a fantastic system I discovered somewhere in Southern California called sniper shot detection. You can identify from 5 miles away through a sight scope a sniper who's 5 miles away and identify not only the presence of the sniper, but also identify the nature of the weapon he is using. Is it a rifle? Is it a Kalashnikov? Is it a something else? So, that is the kind of technology which is available here and in countries like Israel, which we need to bring to India. Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question, which is something that I'd like to direct to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, which is about the power situation that you talked about in the state of Telangana. What is it that you're doing about it? Would it become power surplus in the near future? Are there any plans for any nuclear plants in your state?
See, as I explained, when we became independent, so to say, we had a generation of just 4,000 megawatt, while our demand was over 6,250 megawatts. So we started with a deficit, which we are filling up by buying power every day. But we have already commissioned lots of new power projects. As a part of this bifurcation package, NTPC is expected to augment 4,000 megawatts of power, which they have kickstarted. And state government itself has commissioned many projects. So we are on track to become self-sufficient by 2017 and a surplus state by 2018. And we have also decided that 10% of our power will come from renewable sources, solar energy primarily. So right now bids are going on for 2,000 megawatt of solar augmentation. So this is the plans, but till we become power sufficient, our commitment is to buy and supply power to the industry. And that is what is happening. We have never given even a single day of power holiday in the state, which usually at this time of the year, in April, May, June, usually in the past, we used to have 1 day power holiday, sometimes 2 days power holidays, even 3 days power holidays in a week, which has just not happened this year and will never happen in future.
We have come to the end of the allotted time for us. Just leaves me to thank the panelists on behalf of all of you, Mr. Pallam Raju, Madhukar Jetli, Ashok, Jayesh. We had a fantastic discussion. I'm sure the panelists are available for a few minutes post the session. Encourage all of you to interact with them. Thank you very much.